It is so good to be here with you. It is the Indiana Outdoors Show, and I am your host. Why is it so good, you ask? Well, I just get a little happier when the morning temperatures are mid-40s. Boy, last weekend went up to watch a football game and was driving north on 31, and temperature was 46 degrees. And, man, I couldn't have been any happier. And it's been a fun week talking to people about getting out finally and setting up their final stands, maybe doing some tuning of the bow, getting the guns out, watching their trail cams. I've had some great pictures this year. It should be a fantastic hunting season here in the state of Indiana. That means an opportunity for you to get out and do something fun in the great Indiana outdoors. You know, even though we're in October, there is we're going to make this an all fishing show. Why do you ask? Well, there's some good news if you like to go up to Lake Michigan. It's announced this week of some increased stockings that are going to take place up on Lake Michigan. So interesting to talk to our fisheries biologist and Jeremy Price, who comes from our North Region supervisor, the complexities at our Lake Michigan and what they've been doing and why anglers are going to be really, really excited. I know we're also going to talk fishing a little later with Sandra Clark-Kolax. She is from the southern part of the state. She's a southern fisheries research biologist, and she is going to be talking to us about crappie. We don't talk enough about crappie because it's kind of like the gateway fish. You know, everybody can crappie fish, and some of the best interviews that I've had have been with crappie fishermen on Indiana Outdoors. And, of course, when we're out at the Boat Sport and Travel Show doing the interviews with these crappie guys, man, they are fun. They are colorful. And we're going to find out from Sandra what is up with Indiana because the temperatures have come down and the fish are a little more active, and we're going to find out what you need to do. So there you go. Sandra's going to be with us. What I don't know is going to take place later. And that is our good friend Brent Wheat is going to join us on Indiana Outdoors. He is the editor of Guns Magazine. I never know what Brent's going to talk about. My guess, I know he travels a lot, so we'll get some great stories out of him. But we're also going to see if he's been out doing something on the water so we can keep it all fishing. And knowing where he lives, and one of his hobbies is the smallmouth, my guess is he's been out somewhere slapping the water on Sugar Creek for the opportunity to bring in one of those nice smallmouth. I tell you, Sugar Creek, I hope he talks about this, and if he doesn't, I'll tell you right now, it's one of the great resource destinations. If you're into smallmouth fishing, people come from all over the Midwest to work on that waterway. So you can see we're going to try to keep it all fishing here this weekend. But, man, I'm glad I'm even in here this week. It has been a rough week for old Brother Pointer. Bent over to feed Gus, the burner pup, my 110-pound guy. And as I was standing up, my back just said, ain't going to happen. And I've been down hard all week long. And anybody that has back problems knows, holy smokes, nothing is right in the world when your back is messed up. Absolutely nothing is right in the world. So I'm glad that I'm on the mend and the recovery to be able to be with you this weekend. And hopefully you're going to find somewhere outside to go, maybe go up to a football game. I'm going to be going up to Notre Dame Stadium here. Yes, I am. Watch the Irish take on Southern Cal. Nothing more lonely, dark, and deadly than coming home from Notre Dame after a late game on US 31. So, and the only reason that makes it feasible is when Notre Dame wins. So we'll see what happens. It is the Indiana Outdoor Show. I am your host, Brian Pointer. We're going to do some fishing. We're going to catch up with Jeremy Price from the north. When we return, it's the Indiana Outdoor Show, and I'm the host, Brian Pointer. Oh, I can finally say it. I think fall is here to stay. Now I just wish it would stay for a long time. What a great weekend here in the state of Indiana. A lot of outdoor activities, festivals galore, you name it. It's all happening. Just go somewhere and do something fun. Found a lot of folks in Fielder Forest this week, especially with the turn of the weather, and some folks are putting some venison in the freezer and all sorts of other great activities. But we're not going to neglect some of the good stuff that we have to look forward to, especially next spring. And one of our favorites is to talk about Lake Michigan and fishing and what a great resource it is and has been of late. And Jeremy Price is with us. He is the North Region Fisheries Supervisor. And Jeremy, it's great to have you on Indiana Outdoors this weekend. How you been?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thanks.
Probably just sitting around doing nothing, waiting for Indiana Outdoors to call.
Pretty much.
Well, I know you're a liar. You always have been. Well, it's nice to have you back here on Indiana Outdoors. And I read recently a press release that came out about an announcement affecting Lake Michigan and some stocking increases. We've talked about the great resource and the fishing and how great it's been for the last several years. I mean, the fish just seem to be jumping into people's coolers, but there's a lot of resource management that has gone into that. Tell me what this stocking increase is about and how that comes about.
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of a turbulent period here over the past 7 or 8 years in Lake Michigan, and we've had some low alewife abundance, and those are the prey fish that serve as the primary food source for most of our trout and salmon species. And as a result, the Lake Committee was concerned. The Lake Committee is the organization that manages the lake collaboratively. All of our agencies get together and work on that, and so we were concerned about that low forage abundance, and so we had to make some stocking reductions, and in order to kind of balance out the predator demand on those prey fish populations. And so we feel like the management has done exactly what we wanted to do. The alewife population kind of bottomed out, and then is now increasing again. And you know, one of the things we really were committed to at the outset was we want to start adding fish back when we feel the time's right. And so this new stocking increase is going to roll back some of the reductions that were made in 2017, and that'll add. We're at lake-wide. We're going to add back half of the fish that we stocked. That's our target, our recommendation, and so we'll see what the agencies can do to make that happen.
Well, I know we're talking about a very diverse resource up there. What fish in particular are going to be stocked in increasing fashion?
Yeah, so probably the biggest change that our anglers are going to see is a significant increase in Chinook salmon. We're going to, for the past few years, we've been stocking 75,000 fish, and we've kind of, that's a small enough number that we don't want to spread those out and reduce survival on those. So we've been stocking those fish in an alternating strategy between Trail Creek and the Little Cow system. Historically, we had stocked 3 ports with 75,000 fish each, and we're happy to say that through the add back that the Lake Committee recommended and some fine-tuning on some of our other stockings, we're actually able to go back to that, where we're stocking 75,000 fish at each of those 3 ports. That's East Chicago, Little Calumet, and then Trail Creek. So it's 150,000 fish increase on Chinook, and it's going to be a good thing for our anglers.
So a lot of folks love to get up to Lake Michigan in that area for the fishing resource that it is, and I know that you got coho up there and you've got the Skamania steelhead. How does that all factor into increasing the stockings of these Chinook?
So the balance on our coho stocking, we're going to be stocking basically the same numbers of coho, just a small decrease. But one thing we're doing is we're focusing more on spring fish than our fall stock fish. We stock our fall fish typically in December, and they're a little smaller than the spring fish that we would put out in March or so. And so by holding those fish longer, they get bigger. They end up spending less time in the tributaries where they're subject to predation, and so we get much better survival. We kind of made a shift on our St. Joe River stocking a couple years back, and saw a 5-fold increase when we when we shifted from those fall fish to spring fish. And so that's what's going on with coho. Now with steelhead, our fall or our winter run steelhead numbers are going to stay essentially the same. That's our plan going forward. We are making some cuts to the Skamania. The little cow system in particular is just becoming not a very hospitable place for a summer run fish. We got some thermal issues there that prevent any significant returns. We see it in our creel data where Trail Creek has a similar stocking, and there's lots of pressure for the summer run Skamania on trail, but we just don't see any pressure at all, hardly on Salt Creek and the Little Cow, and so those fish just aren't returning well to creel, and so we're trying to kind of refine things there a little bit, and so we are increasing some coho over there, so that'll enhance that fall fishery for those guys a little bit, and hopefully it looks a little scary on paper to begin with, but we're confident that this is actually going to, for the most part, improve everybody's fishing opportunities.
Jeremy Price is with us. He's the North Region Fisheries Supervisor, and we're talking about Lake Michigan. I think it's important for people to understand that when these decisions were made back in 2017-ish, that there was a promise made to the anglers who were particularly paying attention to this, if you will, and that this is a good thing because the department has kind of said, trust us, we're going to get back, and here you are. You have to feel good about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Chinook especially they're the prize game fish, right? Everybody wants a big Chinook on their line, and we get that, and it's just they really have a major impact on the alewife more so than any fish because they grow so fast. And so once we got comfortable with that, we wanted to make sure that we followed through on our promise, and that's what we're seeing today.
So I got to ask a question. I'm sure somebody's thinking the same thing. Where do these fish come from? I know we've talked about this in the past, and you've got Wisconsin and Michigan that share borders with our Great Lake Michigan. And where do these fish come from that get put back in?
Yeah, so it's a great success story of cooperative management. This year the Chinook eggs that we collected, they're coming from Wisconsin fish. We work with Wisconsin. We go up to their hatcheries, and we collect our eggs, working side by side with them, and we bring those back to Indiana to raise. Our coho and our winter steelhead, they all those eggs, they come from Michigan, so we get that from them. We also have a brown trout stocking, and those come from Illinois. So the only one that we kind of have our own control over is the Skamania, and we collect those from our sea lamp prey barrier at Trail Creek. And so really it's, lake-wide management's an extremely important aspect of delivering quality fisheries to anglers and managing effectively.
I know with such a diverse and massive body of water like Lake Michigan, that cooperation is important, and I've heard this with guests like you over the years, how critically important it is to work with our neighboring states, because it's very different in different parts of the lake for sure. Are they doing the same thing by increasing their stockings?
Yeah, so the Lake Committee made a recommendation that we would add back half of what was stocked, or half of what was cut in 2017, and so each agency has a portion of that they're recommended that they add back to their programs. Now each state has the ability to do what they need to do, and so everybody's kind of working through the process right now on determining exactly what their plan will look like going forward. But we're hopeful that all our partners can come together and adhere to the Lake Michigan Committee recommendation.
And I know that when you I've already heard it stated once that the input of the angler is really important, and I'm sure there's going to be opportunities for them to give some of their own impact and their own story, if you will, to you guys in public meetings as before these stockings occur.
Yeah, absolutely. We feel like everybody is going to like this plan for the most part, but we've got to do some legwork to explain why we think that everybody's going to like it. Because, like I said, on paper, for some steelhead fishermen, it's probably a little scary to look at, and so we intend this fall or this winter to do one, maybe two public meetings where people can come and provide input, and this plan is fairly locked in for 2020, but looking ahead to 2021, we can make adjustments as we need to with the program. We've got, under this plan, we do have our hatchery system pretty well maxed out. We're squeezing every last bit of quality fish out of them that we can. So, but we can make tweaks. We can reduce one species to add back another, and we'll be looking for anglers to give us their input on what they think of this plan and what they would like to see going forward.
Well, I got to ask, you going to get out and take advantage of any fall fishing yourself?
Oh yeah, I've actually got all next week off, and I'm hoping with these cool temperatures that we're going to get some winter run steelhead moving through, and so yeah, absolutely.
What's your favorite?
Well, I grew up fishing the Tippecanoe River, so if you're asking me for my favorite, it's smallmouth on the Tippecanoe over there in Pulaski County. But as for Lake Michigan fishing, you can't beat a stream run Skamania.
You sure can't. It's great to have you, Jeremy Price, the North Region's Fisheries Supervisor. Always appreciate your input and all of those from our biologists and the men and women in our Department of Natural Resources managing the great resource. Thanks for all you do, and hope you have a great weekend.
Yep, you too. Thanks, Brian.
It is a pleasure. And it is the Indiana Outdoor Show. I am your host, Brian Pointer. We're going to continue some fishing. We're going to talk about the good old crappie. When we return, it is the Indiana Outdoor Show, and I am your host, Brian Pointer. Don't go anywhere. It is a great weekend here in the state of Indiana. What a beautiful time to get outside. Fall is finally here to stay. And as I mentioned, we are fishing all over the state of Indiana. Why not? Beautiful fall stuff. Thanks to our great North Region fisheries biologist talking about the stocking increases up on Lake Michigan. But when it comes down to the bread and butter, the good old crappie is what a lot of Hoosiers love to do, and boy, there's a lot of great places to do it. And for us here in the state of Indiana, no better person to talk to about that than Sandy Clark Kolax, who is with us this morning. And it's great to have you back on Indiana Outdoors. How have you been?
I've been busy, very busy, but good.
That's a good thing, because I know you've been out in the field this week and doing all kinds of stuff. What took you out in the field this week?
We are doing some management on a smaller pond that just has a stockpiled bass population. So we're working on removing and relocating those bass to a different lake. We're also taking out some common carp and other nuisance species we find in there.
Well, it's never a dull life in the day for you, for sure. And you've been on with me many times in the past. And I know you would appreciate this, but fall is a great time for crappie fishing here in the state of Indiana. Water temperatures have come way down finally, and that means the crappie are heating up. Why is that?
So in the fall, it kind of is similar to the spring. As water temperatures drop, crappie start moving shallower. Basically, they're just trying to gorge themselves before winter, take on extra food and fat reserves to get them through the winter when they really stop feeding a lot of times. So, fall is a great time to get out there and fish. Today, this week when we were out, the water temperature on the small lake we were at was 67, which I think has probably dropped 10 degrees in the last week and a half or so. And I think we're going to have some nights in the 40s. So that temperature is really going to keep dropping off quickly.
It's it's no secret the crappie is a fan favorite for young and old because it's a pretty simple rig. It's a pretty simple opportunity to catch crappie. I know you can get as sophisticated as you want, and I love the guys who I've interviewed over the years who are master crappie fishermen, but you can just do that from the edge of whatever lake, pond, or off of a pier, whatever. It's an easy opportunity for people to get out and catch some fish, and it's a pretty liberal bag limit, and there's some pretty nice size slabs out there, so it makes for a nice adventure for catching fish. But I know one of the things that is really important to this is the habitat. And I hear people talk about, they dropped a Christmas tree in the lake to create the habitat and the fish, tree stumps, logs, all those types of things. They really like that stuff, don't they?
Yeah, if you look at kind of Indiana's unique, as in we have kind of all conditions. We have large reservoirs with drawdowns. We have reservoirs that, rise up, go up 20, 30 feet. We have some with excessive amounts of vegetation. We have some with no vegetation. And so we really can kind of pick which kind of habitat we need in which lakes, which is kind of an interesting idea. And so, in major reservoirs, a lot of our Corps of Engineers reservoirs, if, you have your depth finder and you're just looking, it's moonscape down there. There is really nothing for those fish to provide cover in. And so habitat kind of, it can concentrate fish, but it also can spread them out within the lake. So if you've only got one down tree in the whole lake, well, all the fish are going to be there.
Right.
So it kind of gives more people better opportunity to catch fish also. So it does concentrate them, but I would also argue it kind of helps spread them out, too, across the lake.
Well, that's why we have you on to help explain this. And I know that there are some resources available if people are looking for maybe a new place to get out and have a fishing adventure and maybe do some crappie fishing this fall as these temperatures decrease, that will help people find lakes that have undergone habitat enhancements. How do you direct people if they're looking for that type of a location?
So we have 4 lakes that we've done habitat projects on in Indiana. We've done our first lake was Sullivan Lake in 2016. And then at Hominy Ridge in northern Indiana in 2017, we actually did some vegetation reintroduction. And we've done Cecil M. Hardin, we've done Lake Monroe, and so we've kind of picked a lake each year and worked on. Some of those projects have lasted longer than a year, but we keep the momentum moving. And, in those couple projects, we've put out over 700 structures in the 3 lakes we've done structure projects on. So we're really trying to, get some stuff out there for fish to provide cover, forage based and things like that. And we've had some great partners and volunteers that make that happen. So we have a website that if you just Google Indiana Reservoir Habitat, that should be one of the first ones that pop up. And on that website, it gives the plans for each project and also the maps that have the GPS coordinates of where those structures are placed, which is what everybody really wants.
Right. It's kind of like going to trick or treating, and you get the map to the house that gives the full size candy bar. Exactly. So when you say a structure, what do you mean? You're building little crappie houses down there?
We do 4 or 5 different types of structures, and we build those and we put them in combination. So we want to create a complex habitat, just like you would find in a really good lake. You'd have some oak trees, but you may also have cedar trees, and then you have logs, and then you have rocks, and all those create different spaces for fish. And so that's what we're trying to replicate, but with materials that are going to last a long time. So we do some structures that are called cribs, and these kind of simulate a conifer tree. So they look like pyramids, and they're built out of boards. Some of the others we do are a PVC cube with corrugated drainage tile all run through the middle of it. And then we've done some pallet structures, which are 5 pallets all screwed together in a teepee kind of style. And so we throw those out, and we'll mix them up when we put them out there and create just different kinds of complexity for fish.
So I'm sure everybody wants to know from the Southern Fisheries research biologist's mouth, what's the hottest rig right now? What's the best jig color? What are you seeing? What are people telling you?
I honestly don't get out fishing that much. I've been doing a lot of stream fishing this summer.
Where have you been?
I really like to hit the Blue River down south, and, I live in southern Indiana, so I hit some of the, smaller creeks and streams there where you can just walk in and throw a kayak in, Patoka and things like that. So I haven't honestly switched over to crappie yet.
There you go. See, I had to put you on the spot. We're talking crappie, and I figured you took the easy way out and didn't have to answer my question. I love it.
One thing that I've been reading, and I kind of the biology mixed in, is, as water temperature drops, fish activity also drops. So definitely think about slowing down your reeling speed when you're bringing in those lures and stuff, because fish reaction time is going to be slower the colder water is. So it kind of more of a leisurely reeling speed than, you may do in the spring when fish are really active and striking hard.
Great advice. Always great to visit with our professional biologists. I know you've been out working hard this week, and I hope you find some opportunity to put your own line in somewhere, but appreciate the update on crappie and great resources if you're getting out and wanting to do something different this fall. Thanks for being with us this weekend.
No problem. Thanks, Brian.
My pleasure. It is Indiana Outdoors. Don't go anywhere. We still have things to talk about. We're going to talk to our good friend Brent Wheat when we return. It's the Indiana Outdoors Show, and I'm your host, Brian Pointer. It is the Indiana Outdoor Show. What a great weekend to be alive in the fall. Great opportunity to get out and field or forest, lake or stream. It doesn't matter. Today we're talking a little bit of lake and stream and pond. Kind of an all fishing. It kind of worked out that way. Here we are in the middle of deer season, but kind of worked out that we talked about some increase in the stocking program up at Lake Michigan next year. Great news from our northern folks, Jeremy Price, and we went down south and visited with Sandra Clark-Colax, talking about the great opportunity for crappie fishing. It's the gateway fish. Everybody can crappie fish, and this time of the year, no better time to do it. And speaking of big fish or little fish in a big pond, big fish in a little pond, whatever you want to call him, he's Brent Wheat. He is the editor of Guns Magazine. He is a regular contributor here on Indiana Outdoors. Brent, how you been?
I've been great, and you can call me anything you want as long as you don't call me late to dinner.
Absolutely. You know it. It's one of my favorite sayings. Use it all the time. And, I don't know if you heard the rest of the show, but we've got Lake Michigan stockings increasing next year, which is great news, and it's been a great resource for the last several years. And water temperatures coming down. Crappie fishing is getting hot. Pardon the pun. And here we are in the fall. We got deer season, archery opened, and you've been traveling all over the place as the editor of Guns Magazine. But you done any fishing lately?
Actually, was it 2 days ago? I hadn't been to the creek, Sugar Creek, my home stomping ground, as they say, and I love this time of year on the creek. So I went up there and just spent a couple hours that I pestered the smallmouth and had a little bit of success. Well,
we gotta hover here because we've talked all fishing. We might as well just hover here for a second because it's another one of Indiana's great fishing resources, the smallmouth, and people come from all over the Midwest, and I don't think people realize what a great opportunity Sugar Creek and many others provide if you're a smallmouth bass fisherman.
Oh, absolutely. I would stack it up against almost any place, a stream that size in the Midwest. I've been fortunate to help the DNR do some shocking surveys over the years, and it's really impressive, aside from the fish you catch, to see what's also out there. So it's a great stream. There's pretty decent access. It's beautiful. The water, I grew up on that creek, and the water quality now is better than it's ever been, at least in my memory of 50-something years. It's a great thing, and I love this time of year. The water's down. It's low, clear, and cool, and I'm not fighting any other fishermen. I have the whole place to myself.
Well, you got to love that. A big executive like you should have his own place. So tell me, I'm going to put you on the spot. You said you had a little success. What did you find that worked at this time of the year in the smallies on Sugar Creek?
Well, it was honestly my trip. I just needed to get some time out from behind the computer, so I grabbed ultralight pole that was sitting in a rack, and it already had one of those little bitty Rebel Wee craws, a tiny little diving crawfish plug. And those were hot like 10 years ago, and guys have kind of quit using them. But I'd had that on from the last trip up there, so I just took that and a couple other lures and some pliers, and it was just honestly, it was just mainly to get out and play in the creek more than anything. But it turned out the fish, they were hitting a little slow. I don't know what the water temperature was, but it was pretty chilly. But they were hitting good, so I landed several, and I didn't go very far up to any of my real honey holes where the big fish lie. But I'm pretty sure if I had spent more time, we would have probably done even better.
But most importantly, you got out and you did it, and it sounds like it's a consistent story. Still great fishing, especially this time of the year. Now, I know you've been a traveling fool here this year as your role as the editor of Guns Magazine. It's the oldest newsstand magazine dedicated to only firearms, and in that capacity, you've had some opportunities. Where have you been? We should do this segment called Where Has Brent Been?
Exactly. I can't remember last time we talked, but I've been to San Diego. I've been to Oregon, which I've never spent a lot of time on the ground in Oregon. That was incredible, out at Thunder Ranch. And then I was over in Illinois, Pike County, Illinois, did a media event and built some really cool guns and did some really good long-range shooting. The last thing was we went squirrel hunting on the final evening. And you remember that stretch at the very end of September where it was like 160 degrees in the shade?
Unfortunately.
That's when we were, yeah. We were squirrel hunting, and oh my Lord, I've never squirrel hunted when it's that hot, because if it's that warm when I'm going out to the woods, I ain't going. But we didn't have any choice, so got to go out, and we chased a few. Of course, they weren't active at all, and they kind of did a little competition, see which group, because they'd pair the riders off. And my group, we chased a couple, but the animals were few and far between, so I think the informal competition was won by two teams that tied with one squirrel. But
well, that's not even enough to make gravy. Now, come on.
Well, exactly. So we had, I think we had Subway that night, so no squirrel and gravy.
Well, that's okay. So I got to ask, in your official capacity, what can people look forward to in the upcoming issues of Gun Magazine?
Well, like most magazines, I'm actually starting to work on the March issue. We're that far ahead. So I think the December issue just came out. We've, of course, got all kinds of great stuff. I like to call us one of the last old school gun magazines. So we try to make it kind of like a good meal. There's some new stuff, some tactical stuff. There's some real old school, lever guns and shotguns and hunting rifles. And there should be something in there for just about everybody. So it was really cool. The other day I had a buddy in Honolulu, of all places, and he texted me a picture. He picked up a copy of Guns Magazine in the gift shop at the Honolulu airport. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Wow. Very progressive of them. Glad to see there's somebody with some common sense. Well, Brent,
Yeah.
it's always great to have you be a part of Indiana Outdoors. Glad you got out and did a little smallmouth fishing, and I always love to hear about your trips, and most importantly, appreciate your contributions here to Indiana Outdoors, and that's going to continue on through this fall. Any place that you're headed out that we should be looking forward to?
Oh, I've got a full schedule in November. Actually, today, though, we're heading out, meeting family. We're going to pick apples. So I'm really looking forward to that. There's nothing like a fresh Hoosier fall apple right out of the orchard. So
There you go. Well, we'll check back in with you when you have some fun stuff to talk about. Brent, always great to visit with you.
Thanks, Brian.
My pleasure. It is Indiana Outdoors. I am your host this beautiful weekend. Don't go anywhere. We're going to wrap it up when we return right after this. Well, we did it. I actually did it. We actually made it all about fishing. It is the Indiana Outdoor Show. Brian Pointer, your host. The only wild card I knew was going to be Brent Wheat, because you never know when you get Brent on the phone, the editor of Guns Magazine, what the outcome of that conversation is going to look like. And you know what? Because I know him so well, I knew I could just tease him into a little fishing story. He did get out and had the opportunity to hit the water with his favorite light rod and reel. on Sugar Creek this week, and that sea was a triumvirate. We had the north, talking about Lake Michigan and all these great stockings that are taking place. We had the south, talking about some great crappie fishing with Sandra Clark-Kolax, who is the Southern Fisheries Research Biologist. They all do such great work. What a resource to manage Lake Michigan. We've had such great success over the last couple of years, as you heard Jeremy talking about. But this increase in fish stocking, some 90,000, increasing an emphasis on the Chinook salmon, is going to have a lot of impact. And, people that like to fish, especially up there, the Chinook is the big dog, so to speak, and what people love to fish, and they should be happy because this is putting back and keeping a promise to replace what was declined a few years ago, back in the stocking decline in 2017. So that's what management does. That's what these biologists do, and they do such a great job, and it's going to provide an increased opportunity, at least in 2020 and beyond. Public hearings and opportunities for public input, not hearings per se, but public input, you know what I'm saying, are coming forward probably later this fall. If you're going to go somewhere, maybe take some crappie jigs with you. You heard from Sandra Clark-Kolax from the Southern Fisheries Research Biologist what to look for, and she was having some fun this week out in the field. And of course, Brent, as always, it's great to visit with him. We got a little confirmation of his visit to the Sugar Creek. Therefore, we did all fishing. It is the Indiana Outdoor Show. I, your host, Brian Pointer, and we will be back next weekend. Remember, folks, turn in a poacher, 1-800-TIP-IDNR. Be safe. I'll see you outside, everybody.